This week on The Grit Crusade.
We rest from our work. Right? Jimmy Buffett, everybody's working for the weekend, right? We're waiting so that we can rest. But what I begin to realize is that we actually, the opposite is true. We can work from our rest.
Hey, Grit Crusaders, welcome to the Grit Crusade podcast. My name is Brooke, and I am your host here today with my amazing guest, David. Yay! Thank you so much for being, thank you so much for being here. So give you guys just a little bit of background. David and I met in Franklin, Tennessee in a program called Business Accelerator that's run by the Full Focus company, Michael Hyatt and his team. And so David is a business coach. But mostly the thing that's so intriguing about him to me is he is all about rest and sabbaticals. And so we're going to talk a lot about that today. So if it's your first time here on the podcast, thank you for being here. Welcome. You will get some great stories and hear some awesome stuff from David. And if you're returning, welcome back. So you guys be sure and subscribe or download on your favorite streaming platform so we can continue to share our message with so many people. So David, I'm going to send it over to you and let you kind of just tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, happy to do so, Brooke, and glad to be on your podcast with you. And thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to tell a little bit about the story. So, I spent 27 years as a pastor in local churches, first as an assistant pastor, then a lead pastor. And then the last 9 years of my career was doing IT for a nonprofit. And my wife and I moved to Tennessee in 2017 rather quickly and unexpectedly. But when we moved out, we found a home that had an upstairs and a downstairs, and we'd just become empty nesters. And so we had a vision of turning it into a place where people could come and rest and come on sabbatical, particularly people in ministry. Serving both the United States and around the world. And so over the last, I guess it's almost 7 years, 6.5 years, that has become a nonprofit. And we've had guests from all around the world stay here for sabbaticals and then acquired a second home.
And you don't call them missionaries, right? You call them...
We do not.
What is the term you use?
Cross-cultural workers. Yeah.
There it is, cross-cultural workers. So now you have a second home.
We do. We have a second home we acquired in, I guess it was spring of 21. And so that gives us two places, here in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains of East Tennessee. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So that is you guys' nonprofit and you and your wife work that together. Okay. Mm-hmm. But then professionally, tell us a little bit about your new coaching program that I guess you've been a coach, but now you're coaching all like solely on your own, right?
That is correct. Yeah, I took my own sabbatical, and starting in the beginning of 22, and we took a 90-day sabbatical. And at the end of that, really decided I wanted to open my own coaching and consulting business. And really started, honestly, with IT consulting and a small handful of coaching clients. But over a year, it really transitioned to my first love, which is coaching small business leaders, coaching pastors, coaching missionaries. I like to say how to live from overflow instead of overwhelm. And so it has...
That's good.
Gone amazingly better than I could have imagined. I now have 5 people on my team alongside me. 4 coaches and then a director of administration. And we have, I think at this point, 65 different coaching clients that we're working with.
Okay, so let's go over that again. So you've got 5 people on your team.
Right.
Okay. And are those coaches or they have different roles? Those are coaches?
So we, in addition to me, there are 3 other coaches. And then my wife, Jan, is a spiritual director. So similar to coaching, but spiritual direction is a little bit different. And then we have a full-time director of administration that also works with us.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay. So you have a group that's kind of unique, I think, right? Of fathers that you coach.
Which I think correct.
Like in business, and I grew up missionary Baptist. So like I just knew a preacher. Like that's all I knew. And he's the preacher and the preacher knows everything and the preacher should be able to do everything. But then like obviously 39 years old now on the backside of this and in my own leadership journey, realizing that just because someone is called to ministry doesn't mean they're equipped as a leader and oftentimes needs so much of the same training as a business owner would.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had the privilege of working with multiple Protestant pastor clients, but also in the last, really since last summer, so almost a year, with a group of Orthodox priests from the Greek Orthodox tradition. And so, you mentioned sort of putting your pastor on a pedestal and thinking he could do all these
Right.
things and called, and that is even more magnified in the Orthodox Church.
Mm.
And but they, unlike what we might think of a typical father or priest in the Orthodox Church, they're married, they have kids, they take their kids to soccer, and all those kind of things, just like we do. And so, but as you might imagine, it's a big job, and it doesn't have an end or beginning of each day. And so, learning how to live
Yeah.
differently is really important.
That work-life balance or work-life flow
Absolutely.
is
Yeah.
so key for them for sure. So the
Yeah.
other thing that, well, I guess I shouldn't say the other thing. The main thing that when I first met you, we were at a connection dinner together in Franklin,
Hmm.
Tennessee. We started talking about sabbaticals, and there's not a lot of people that talk about sabbaticals in the business world. And so I had started doing some research and realizing like this is kind of been a ministry thing. You heard of
Hmm.
preachers or missionaries going on sabbatical, but I'm so passionate about rest, balance, and then also these longer term rest periods or sabbaticals, if you will. How did you guys like take that concept and now you're hosting a family that's not in ministry?
Right. Great question. Like a lot of stories, it starts with brokenness.
Mm,
And so my family and I moved from Chicago to California in 2003 to start a church from scratch. And it went really well, had lots of amazing impact, and we had to do all of the fundraising and finding people and finding buildings and buying equipment is really like a startup business in a lot of ways, but
right.
also the whole
Mm-hmm.
spiritual piece of it. And that went really, really, really well. But about 5 years in, I was tasked to take on an additional role in the group that helped us get started. And over a period of 5 years, tried first to replace myself externally and then internally. And, quite frankly, I stopped doing good self care. And I just
Mm.
kept, here's the lie I told myself. Well, it's just for a season.
Oh,
So I,
it's just
I
until we
can,
have the building. It's just until we
it's
have the equipment. It's just
just,
until Christmas is
you got
over.
it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And well, as you might imagine, that season ended up being longer and longer until I found
Mm.
myself. I was, trying to live the life of being a good dad and a good husband and a good pastor. And so I was actually flying back from the East Coast to the West Coast. I was going to be home for less than 24 hours. My daughter had a high school play, and unfortunately, airlines don't always arrive when they're supposed to because of various reasons. And so I found myself stuck in the Phoenix airport for 6.5 hours. I missed my connecting flight by 15 minutes. And
Mm.
I was sitting there, and I remember writing in my journal later, I was too tired to watch Netflix. And I thought, I didn't even know there was a category where you were so tired that even sort of escaping into media, would be good. And I was sitting in
Yeah.
that moment, and it wasn't an audible voice at all, but I just had this impression from God that, David, is the life that you're living a life that you want to pass on to your children or to the people in your
Mm.
church? And it was very gentle, but I remember immediately in my head saying, God, I don't even like the life I'm living. Why would I want to pass that on to my kids or the people in my church? And so that
Yeah.
started this journey of realizing I was living out of overwhelm.
Mm.
And the hard part of the story is what became pretty apparent over the next few months is, trying to do lots of different things that we actually ended up closing the doors of the church on our 10th anniversary
Wow.
because there was simply no gas left in the tank. And, we still had over 100 people coming on Sunday mornings, and we're seeing people come to Christ all the way up till the end. And yet I was just empty physically, emotionally, spiritually, and really spent a year kind of recovering and learning how to live differently. And so that's kind of what birthed the beginning of understanding what does it mean to live from rest. And so, a little one more thing I'll add there is most of us, and I was this way, we rest from our work. Right? Jimmy Buffett, everybody's working for the weekend, right? We're waiting so that we can rest. But what I begin to realize is that we actually, the opposite is true. We can work from our rest.
Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay. That's like an
Yeah,
epic sentence. Okay, I'm going to say it again. So, what we typically do is we rest from our work, but we can actually work from our rest.
exactly.
Wow. So countercultural. I love it.
It
Like, I
it is,
absolutely love
yeah.
it.
And that's what
Yeah.
really changed for me. And it's not an original idea with me. I stumbled across it in a book I was reading about the creation story. And we think God worked for 6 days and then He rested, right? So that's why we think. But actually, people were created on day six. And the very first thing they did was they got a job assignment. And then because the Hebrew day starts at sundown, not in the morning like we do, they went to bed
Mm.
and spent an entire day of resting. So God's like, hey,
Mm.
here you are. Here's your job assignment. The very first thing you're going to do is rest. And
What
after
a
you've had a whole day of rest, now you can go work and do your calling. So,
what a perspective shift.
yeah.
You know, I just released a podcast episode this week. I typically record like a couple months ahead, right?
Sure.
And so I was like, what was that? What was that episode about? Like I see the title, I see the description, but I couldn't remember like what I actually talked about in the episode. And so I don't listen to every single episode, but I listened to the one this week. And in that episode, I told a story and it was my story at 33 years old, but I'm telling the
Mhm.
story as it's like another character. And it's the same story that you just said, right? Like, my business had been open like 4 years. I was so exhausted, so drained. Like
Yeah.
I was like taking my kid to daycare in the morning, picking him up to spend a couple hours to take him to his grandma, to work all night, to pick him up, to do it over and over. And one day I was like, I made this schedule and I don't like it.
Yeah.
Like, wait a second, I'm in charge of my own schedule. Like I work for myself and I hate my schedule. Like this doesn't make sense. And I think there's those crux moments where you realize, hold on a second, I can do different. I can do better.
Yeah, absolutely. That crux moment's a great way to say it. It's like the light bulb goes on and I just, like you did, I stopped and looked back and went, this is unsustainable. And the interesting thing, I found even working with business leaders is what we all dream of is let's have a life that has no challenges or a business that has no challenges. But really, what we have most of the time is we have the challenges caused by stagnation and decline, or the
Mm,
challenges caused by growth and success or fruitfulness. And if we
yeah.
have to choose between one or the other, it's a lot better to be able to choose the challenges of success and fruitfulness. But when a business grows or a church grows or a ministry grows, a nonprofit grows, it has to be not just scalable, but it has to be sustainable. And so I
Mhm.
find that, in the work with business coaching, the work with the fathers, working with, cross-cultural workers from around the globe, that's a pretty common challenge is it scales in a way that's not sustainable. And we all have that moment
Mhm.
where we say, okay, this is not sustainable. What do I do differently?
I've had that twice, I think. I had it when I
Mm,
was 33, and then, after COVID, our childcare business was like, $200,000 business became a $1,000,000
yeah.
business, in the
Wow.
matter of months, and the quality declined. We didn't have staff trained well enough
Yeah.
and so we had to do like a pull scale back moment that now we're almost finished rebuilding from because it was like that's not sustainable. Like that's not the quality. That's not what we want to put out there. That's not our best. And it's painful. It's so
Hmm.
painful. But I mean, I think all of it comes back to taking the look in the mirror about what is really going on. And I know you see this in coaching too, right?
I
Is like
do.
so
Yeah.
many people they don't realize or maybe don't understand the importance of that stop moment. Like
Hmm.
let's just stop and assess like right where we are right now and not be shameful about it. But here's where we are and like this is our starting place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what is the biggest challenge that you see when you are working with your clients like on rest and eliminating busyness?
Great question. I think there's really two different things, and both of them are usually present. And the first one I would call a mindset, which is simply, I can't, right? Or
Hmm.
Or I can at some mythical point in the future at which things will change, and then I will be able to rest, right? The lie I told myself, "Hey,
After
it's just for a
Christmas, after,
season."
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, exactly. And um, sometimes that's the big barrier, is to think that working harder, working longer is gonna keep things going and be more successful than, like you just said, taking a pause, assessing, and living and leading differently. And in Michael Hyatt's book, The Double Win, he talks about a study of stockbrokers and people in financial industry in New York City, and they looked at how many hours a week they worked. And there was a point, and I don't remember the exact number. It wasn't 40; it was a little bit above 40. But after that point, they worked more hours, but they were less productive, less
Mm,
successful.
mm-hmm.
But we have people out in our culture saying, "Hey, sleep under your desk." You might know who I'm talking about. Sleep under
Yeah.
your desk. Take mind-enhancing drugs so you can work longer. If you work twice
Yes,
as much as
yes.
everybody else, you'll be successful. And so that is really the hardest part. And especially when I'm working with pastors and missionaries, there's that added element of, well, I'm doing God's work, so therefore it has to keep going. But business leaders can say the same thing, right? I'm the
Mm-hmm.
rainmaker. If I don't keep going out there and selling, or if I don't keep producing content, if I don't do my thing, then the business won't survive without me.
Right. Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so I think that first piece is mindset. And the second is just what I like to call mechanics, which is, okay, I've realized I need to do something differently. Well, how? How do I change my schedule? How do I change my habits? How do I delegate? How do I communicate? How do we do what you did, Brooke, where you realize you need to step back and
Right.
actually restructure and rethink? One of my former VPs I used to work for in the nonprofit would say, sometimes we have to go slow so that we can go fast.
I like it. That's good.
Yeah.
That's
And so
really
just,
good.
yeah, mindset and mechanics are the two things I see most often.
Well, I'll tell you, I stepped out of operations of our companies
Yeah.
a little over a year ago. So November of 22. And I communicated it, with our families, especially the ones that have been there forever. We have a childcare business and a youth rec
Hmm.
business, and explained to them why. My husband and I, like you and your wife, we work in our business together. And
Yeah.
so we have a 6-year-old. So if one
Mm.
parent is there, the 6-year-old has got to be with the other parent.
Right.
And so, I did a feedback survey recently, like on our facility. We just opened a new, like several $1 million, brand new ground up build next to as an expansion. And I was trying to get some feedback on like how things are going, those kind of things. And I always ask questions like, is there anybody on staff that's like major experience, super memorable? Because we like to
Mm.
highlight them and celebrate them. And is there anybody that's major experience difficult? And I had a couple people that responded, me. Never happened before. 10 years in business. It's never happened before.
Wow.
And the reason why is they didn't see me at the like on site at our operations enough, but they see me on Facebook because I'll do like live videos and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I had like on our, like we have a members access groups and stuff. So I went on there, and I'm not normally like a defensive person, but I went on there and, addressed some of the concerns. Thank you guys for the input. This is great stuff. And then now we're going to talk about me. And I said, I know you guys see me as a business owner and you trust me with your babies. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But before that, I'm a mom,
Mm.
and I need you to see me as a mom, because when you see my husband there at night till 9 o'clock at night, someone else is at home putting him to bed. Someone else is taking
Yeah.
him to his activities. Someone else is, the amount of response I got from the parents in our gym, I'm not saying I made those couple people happy, but people
Right.
were so like drawn to that. Like, go you for having your priorities in order. But like, I
Mhm.
feel so strongly about that. Like, to me, there's nobody else that can raise him. Right. And so somebody else can always answer the phone. And I told, I kind of lined that all out in the little video I sent out. But it's just so countercultural to what people are used to. Is they're used to just the constant hustle mentality. And,
Mhm.
how can you do more, be more, have 5 more jobs? And it's like, at what point as a society, my best friend's in ministry, and we talk about this a lot. Can we keep sustaining this? There's AI, there's, new software that makes it faster. And nobody ever says, I got that done so much faster. now I'm going to rest. No, they hop on to the next task,
Mm-hmm.
And so like
Yeah.
how do you shape that mindset? That's like the struggle of leadership.
It is, and I think back to 2020 and the pandemic, and one of the things that I heard and read was people rediscovering, wow, this is what it's like to be home. This is what it's like to have dinner
Mm,
with my family. This is what it's like to spend time with my kids. And I think probably some people that was the aha moment for them, and they've tried to restructure their life.
mhm.
But in other ways, it's easier just to go right back onto the hamster wheel.
I
And
know, and I feel like we're 4 years out, so we just had leap day yesterday
right.
that we're recording on March 1st, so this will come out in May, so it's a couple months later. And so last leap day, I was in Tampa, Florida. Best friend was getting married, Melissa, and it was the next week that the world, like shut down.
Wow.
That was like our last trip. So like when leap day
Mm,
came yesterday, I told my husband, I said, this time 4 years ago, like everything was normal. Like what we said, thought was normal. And then the world
wow.
shut down. So like this next week, like depending on what state you lived in, over the next 14 days is like the 4-year anniversary of the world shutting down. So we're 4 years past that. And I find myself asking myself all the time, like, how do we remind people about what they
Mm,
discovered, the goodness in the pandemic, about staying home, about spending time with people and not just trying to have the next thing or the next title or the next amount of money and find like the beauty in that stillness.
yeah. That's a great question. I wish I knew the answer, the
Yeah,
magical answer
right.
that we
Yeah,
could,
right.
nobody wants another global pandemic, so we can learn that again. But maybe
Yes.
something a lot less dramatic and simple.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. But I think, you described and I described, a lot of us do have those personal aha moments.
Yeah.
And if we can actually pause ourselves and not just say, oh, well, that's crazy, and just kind of keep going back, onto the same pattern, then individually, we can have our own version of a reset and learn to
I
live and
think
lead
so
differently
too.
from there.
I
Yeah.
call that the default mode. So you
Mm,
default back into what, and
hmm.
I didn't like you said earlier, I didn't make that up. I read it somewhere, but it's just like a computer, what is your
Yeah.
default mode and how do you combat that? How do you change that default mode?
Yeah.
Because we can all have a resolution or a new habit, or I'm going to try a new planner or all the things, but how do we sustain that over time, is the thing
Absolutely.
is the, uh, is the behavioral change, right?
Yeah.
For sure. All right,
Yeah. The
before we go
mindset
on,
and then the
yeah,
behavior. Absolutely.
yeah. See, that's what you just said. See, I learned something from you today already. It's not hard to learn stuff from you, David. You're imparting
Oh,
so much wisdom. I'm like, I should be taking notes. And I'm like, wait, I can listen to this again. I don't have to take notes. Okay, so we're going to do a fun segment on the podcast that I call Trivia in the Trenches. So I'm going to ask
okay.
you a question and see if you know the answer. Okay, you ready?
Wow. Putting me on the spot here,
Yeah,
Brooke.
this is
Okay.
it. This is it. And it's always something super random that has nothing to do with like any of the topics we're talking about. All right,
Okay.
here we go. What bird can swim but cannot fly?
Bird that can swim and cannot fly. I would say a penguin.
Yay, you got
Oh,
it. Oh my
okay.
goodness. I'm so proud of you. You were like the first guest to guess it in forever. That was so good. So good. All right. So a few fun facts about penguins. The oldest penguin fossil found was 62 million years old. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah,
That is
definitely must have
crazy.
been on. They must have been on the ark. Like there was definitely had to be penguins on the ark. Although I always wonder if like the water animals actually went on the ark because it was a flood, so you didn't have to put like a shark on the ark, did you? Because it would have been in the water.
I That makes a lot
I
of
know.
sense to me.
I
Yeah.
know. I don't. That's like Brookism. No one. That's like not probably biblically founded, but here we are. All right. The other thing that I found very interesting about penguins is they have a very fast metabolism and poop every 20
Mm.
minutes.
Wow.
Every
I'll bet your
20 minutes.
6-year-old loves facts like that about penguins,
He
right? Because
does. He
poop is
does.
really cool when you're 6. Actually,
It,
honestly, it's cool when you're in junior high too. But yeah, that we're
it,
digressing. So
yeah. I know. Could you imagine like if humans pooped every 20 minutes? That would just be like a plumbing disaster, right?
it
Probably.
would be. It would
Take
be.
a break from have to take a break from work from all the time. So, all right. So let's get back a little bit on topic. So tell us a little bit about what you do outside of coaching and working with people on sabbaticals. So what do you do for fun?
Um, One of my favorite things to do, outdoors is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But I love being in nature, and a couple of my favorite things. I love sport kayaking, and so one
Okay,
of my
what
favorite
is
things to
sport
well, so
kayaking?
there's like whitewater kayaking where you wear a
Okay.
helmet and you go down a crazy thing and you go upside down underwater.
Okay.
That's not me. That I might
Okay.
learn to do that someday, but mine is getting in a kayak on. Some people call it flat water kayaking, where you're on a
Yeah.
lake. And so we have a
Okay.
state park not too far from where, and I love to get out there at like I don't know 6 o'clock in the morning, just as the sun is coming up, and
Oh,
just paddle right along the edges of the lake under the tree. The power boats aren't out yet, and we also have we're in the Tennessee Valley Authority area, so we've got I don't know 30 different lakes close by, but there's also one that's completely dedicated, no power craft at all,
oh,
just kayaks and
nice.
canoes.
Nice.
And I just love to get out on the water and just paddle really slowly along the edge. And one time I was out, I saw a hawk that was feeding its babies, and it was coming down, and
Oh,
I was about 10 feet away from the rock, and it was taking pieces of the fish it had captured and flying
oh,
them up a piece at a time until it noticed me and then flew away. And so I just
yeah.
love that stillness of doing that.
Mm-hmm. In the early
Also,
morning.
yeah, early morning, especially, you can do that in the summer before it gets hot and humid. Also love hiking.
Same.
We're 45 minutes from the Appalachian Trail, and I would say down here in this part of Tennessee, we call it Appalachia. I know those Northerners call it Appalachia. So when I call the Appalachian Trail,
Appalachia.
that's the reason. That's the way.
Appalachia. Yeah. So my
East.
husband and I, we're overnight backpackers. So like
Oh
we
yeah, us
hike
too.
and camp in the woods. Yeah, we love that. And he's kayaks. But I like to paddleboard, and he got me a paddleboard for
Oh,
my
okay.
birthday. But now I've got to figure out. So he bought me these mount things that I've got to like figure out how to put on my Bronco so that I can transport the kayak because it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, not the kayak, the paddleboard. It's huge and it's not an inflatable
Yep.
and it's really nice. So I haven't taken out the new paddleboard yet because I got it in October. And so now we're in competition season for our cheer program. And so now
Sure.
it's getting the weather's about the same as Tennessee and Arkansas. So weather's getting a lot nicer, and I'm going to take that paddleboard out. So transporting it's my first thing I've got to figure out with the Bronco. So do you guys have like a roof rack, or do you have like you
I
have
do.
a
Yeah.
hitch rack?
I have two racks for both kayaks, and a lot of times in the summer I'll just leave the kayaks up for weeks at a time, and that way,
Yeah.
it's like that habit thing where if you have to get out there and do all the things in order to go do what you love, and
Mm-hmm.
so leaving the kayaks on the roof, I just get in the car. It's early. I drive. I take them off. I kayak and put them back up, and can
Yeah.
do that before the workday starts. And so,
I
yeah, but
love
love
that.
hiking, backpacking, and then we bought a teardrop trailer a couple of years ago, and so we've
Okay.
enjoy. One of my goals is to get to all of the national parks that are in the continental United States, and so I'm
Do you have a
about
passport? Like they have, like, do you have
I
a national park passport? The one that you put
I
like the
do,
stamps on? I got one
yeah.
too. I got one too. I've only gotten a couple. It was up here above my desk. I've only gotten a couple stamps so far, but then I also learned if you happen to, like, sometimes we'll be traveling and just happen upon a national park and they'll stamp a little square for you or
You
have a
got it,
sticker
yeah,
and you can, yeah, I've learned a little national park thing. So that's cool.
yeah.
Have you been to Hot Springs National Park yet?
I have not.
Oh, in Arkansas. Okay. So
I
Hot
know
Springs
where it
has a
is.
national
It's
park.
on
Yep.
my list. Yeah.
Yep. It's about 45 minutes from here. And then all the
Okay.
lakes are in Hot Springs too. So all of our big lakes are there. So like Lake
Okay.
Washita, Lake Hamilton, Lake Catherine. So you come to Hot Springs, you're going to have to bring the kayak because
Bring the kayaks. That sounds
you
great.
need
No, I
to.
would actually love that. Love that.
Yeah, that would be great. So tell us what's next for you, kind of what's coming up. So you've settled into this, coaching program. You've got a good team built. Kind of what's on the horizon? What happens next?
That's a great question. So there was the dream that we had, as I made a 3-year dream list 2 years ago, that my wife and I would do, extended travel trips, and
Mm-hmm.
I've this is probably helpful. I've set up something that I just found a name for it the other day. It's called fixed schedule productivity. Comes from Cal Newport, who wrote Deep Work,
Okay.
and it's basically you say these are the hours I'm going to work, and then everything has to fit in it. And so at the end of our sabbatical, as we were in this last phase, this kind of how are we going to live life differently returning from sabbatical, Jan and I decided that we would, she does coaching and spiritual direction, that we would concentrate all of our coaching appointments every other week. And we would leave every other week completely empty of
Ooh, okay.
appointments. And so that would allow us to do a couple things. It would allow us to go on vacation. It would allow us to focus on the sabbatical ministry. It would allow us to do other things. And so that was going really great. And then there was this life changing event last May
Mm-hmm.
where our first grandchild was born. And so she's 9 months
Oh,
old. And it's so funny because the idea of like going on a month-long vacation means we miss a month of her life.
oh my gosh. Now,
Uh,
what's her name?
Her name is Hannah, and
Oh, so
she's
sweet.
she's just doing all the fun baby things. And
Yeah.
my daughter only lives about 45 minutes away from us, and so one of the things with fixed schedule productivity that I get to do is I will just go, first time mom, husband works full time. I'll go and just hang out with Hannah for 2 hours so she can go grocery shopping or
Oh, wow.
do the mom errands that take 3 times as long when you've got a car seat and a diaper bag and all that kind of stuff. And
And the
so,
baby throws
yeah,
up, and then
so
you need to change the diaper, and then all the things
yep,
happen. Yeah.
all of
Yep.
that good stuff. And so I just absolutely adore my granddaughter. And just, one of the things I want to make sure I maintain in the future is the
Yeah.
freedom to do that. And so we had a lot of plans about making these big epic trips, taking 4 or 6 weeks off. And then
Mm-hmm.
this cute little girl smiles at us, and it just, we don't know. We don't know
Oh,
exactly what the
oh my
future looks like,
gosh. Yeah.
except that we, especially in this first year of life where so much is changing every day, we want to be there for that. And
Absolutely. And then so my son started kindergarten this year. And so
okay, wow, big
we had,
change.
yeah, it was a huge life change. He's in public school, so like traditional
Hmm.
schedule.
Yeah,
And so we realized, I realized, I don't know why it took me this long. It was like 2 or 3 months before kindergarten. I was like, oh wait, he's gonna like actually have to be there all the time. Like I'm not gonna be able, we're not just be able to take a vacation whatever time of year we want. Like it just didn't dawn on
exactly.
me. And so I feel like once she gets in school, you guys may, things may change a little bit because she's gonna be less available. And kindergarten's a whole new fun season because then they learn all of these things. You have no idea where they learned them from or who taught them these words or, all of
Yeah.
that. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gives you the freedom in the daytime because now you've got that 5 or 6 hours. Well, if it's
Yeah.
half day
Yeah.
kindergarten, a half a day, but you're right. Now your family time is summertime and school vacations and weekends.
Mm-hmm.
You
It
can't just pick
is.
up and leave the same way. So we're experiencing the reverse of that. Being empty nesters for 7 years, having that complete schedule freedom to now it's like, oh wow, we're rethinking things, and it's not a bad thing,
Yeah.
right? Get to hang
No.
out with my granddaughter or go take an extended vacation. Either one's a win. It's just trying to figure out the balance in this point.
Oh, I love that. I'm so blessed. So, what a blessing for your daughter and your granddaughter to
Yeah,
have you guys close too. That makes a big help.
yeah,
My mother-in-law lives here in town, and then we have
yeah.
another family friend that's like a second grandmother to my son, and it's just
Awesome.
amazing. Like I'm like, I need somebody to pick up today. I need somebody to pick up, help with
Yeah,
this activity, and it creates a village that just adds more love into your child's life, and it's just absolutely amazing.
yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so one more work question I'm going to ask you, and then we'll see if there's
Sure.
anything else that maybe I missed that you wanted to be sure and talk about on the podcast today. So, when you're taking in a new client, okay, like a new coaching client, whether it's a
Hmm.
father or just a business owner or somebody, what are the things you're looking for to see if they're like a good fit with you, right? Because everybody that you talk with is not going to be a perfect fit for David. Okay. So
Right.
what kind of clients are you looking for as like your ideal client for your coaching business that aligns with what your expertise is, right? And what you're trying to help, them along in their journey.
Sure. Oh, great question. I remember there was a phrase when Business Accelerator program where we met had a tagline, and it was for successful but overwhelmed leaders.
Mm,
And I think the combination of those two things is really important. I was just on the phone yesterday or Zoom with a potential client, and exactly that, very successful, but also overwhelmed. And so I think that if someone is in business survival mode where they're trying to, do we have enough cash flow to make the payroll this week? And, they're just completely not in a growth mode where their problems don't come because of scale and success, they're not a good fit. And then I think, on the business side, I think as I've really, this is for me, not for the other coaches on my team, but just for me, I think there is what I would call sort of a professional services person. So financial planner, insurance, realtor, CPAs, people like that, who many times their name has been the business. And
Mm,
now they've built a team. They've probably got an administrative assistant or executive assistant. They may have some people helping, but they're trying to no longer be the bottleneck because they're
yeah.
still in that place of either being, the primary rainmaker, the large portion of the business comes from them, or it's they're the personality on the podcast or the content and all those things, and they need to move from being the bottleneck to being the conduit, and because otherwise they're trapped by their own success.
Love
And
that. That's
so,
good.
yeah, and so, pastors and missionaries fit in that same category because very often, while we wouldn't use the term rainmaker or things like that, they are the sort of face that goes with the place or the church in this case, and oftentimes find themselves in the same place. And so, yeah, so if I'm working with people, who might have a team of 50 and they've got, 4 or 5 divisional leaders and all those things, certainly can be helpful to them. But I think the sweet spot for me is those people where they built the business and now it's to a point that it's unsustainable if they're still the main person and can't learn how to delegate well and build a team well and honestly get the freedom that they want by having the business or being in that ministry, as opposed to feeling like one of the taglines I use, and I'm not a huge fan of marketing taglines because I always feel like they're a little cheesy, but a phrase that seems to resonate is you can have a business and a life, not a
Mm,
business that is your life.
mm-hmm.
And
That's
substitute, you
good.
can have a ministry and a life, not a ministry that
Yeah.
is your life. And so it's really people that's where they find themselves, and they want to be in a place where they can have both.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So if someone's listening to the podcast and they happen to want to work with you, and maybe you at that time are accepting clients, how would they find out information about working with you and your team?
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way is to go to our website, which is edensviewcoaching.com. So Eden, like
Okay.
the Garden of Eden, but
Mm-hmm.
Edens, plural, view, coaching.com. And
And
then
we
there's
will
some
definitely put
information
that in the
there.
show. Yeah, we'll put that in the show
Yeah.
notes for you as well, for sure. Okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about on the podcast today that we didn't get to?
You know, um, I think the only other thing, I was thinking as you asked that last question, the typical answer might be, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. One of the things that I've done is I'm pretty absent on social media,
Mm,
and I think I look back on that was a fairly intentional decision. And I think especially for business owners that are out there, everybody's got a different strategy in a different market, but the best place, if you can work it, people love to do work with people they know, like, and trust.
mm-hmm.
And I've just been really blessed to have built a business on relationships and referrals.
Yeah.
And that has been really fun, just to see how people have shown up, and you deliver good value and you have a good relationship and people want to refer their friends. And so at some point when we add a marketing person to our team, we'll increase the social media presence some and do some content and things like that. But especially for people that are feeling like they have to do everything, I've just found that relational focus,
Mm-hmm.
in fact, I was actually in a fractional executives meeting, and everybody that was doing really, really well pointed to relationships and referrals as the primary source of business.
Mm,
And the
that's
ones that
good.
were struggling were really focused on how do I get X number of thousands of views or followers or likes and those things. And so obviously you need both. It's not an either or, but I found that when you focus on delivering value to people, um, some of the rest takes care of itself. So
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. In our childcare business, it's there would be no point in us spending money in marketing, really, because in childcare, the number one tool is word of mouth. A mom says, I've had a good
absolutely.
experience at. And so a lot of the service based businesses, I feel like that's really important too. Okay.
Yeah.
So All right. I said I should never say I have one more work question. I should never say that on the podcast because I always have another one. Okay, I do have one more, and then we'll wrap up here in a minute.
Okay.
So one of the things we talked about at one of the dinners we were at that I had never thought about before we had this conversation, you may not even remember it, was and I may not use the right words, but like the onset and like the offset of the sabbaticals. So
Right.
I told you, I see people coming back from sabbatical and then it's like 6 weeks before they get back in gear, you know? And you were like, okay, well, there's like some strategy to this.
Yes.
Will you talk
Yes.
about that
And
a little bit?
so we did. Yeah. It's funny. I was reading the news this morning and they just increased the speed limit on the interstate here locally. Right. It went from 65 to 70, which is good because everybody was already driving 70. Right. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes we think of sabbatical as I'm going to work all the way right up to the end, and then I'm going to start my sabbatical, and then I'm going to end it, and then I'm going to come right back. And I sort of equate that to you're going 70 miles an hour down the interstate and you just make a hard right turn into sabbatical.
Mm,
That is not going to go well. And in the same way, coming back from sabbatical, it's like trying to pull out onto an interstate highway where everybody else has been going 70 miles an hour and you've been in this,
hmm
quiet neighborhood where you've been sabbaticaling for whatever period of time. And so I think that what you need there is intentional strategies. And when you think about sabbatical, getting a sabbatical coach ahead of time and then after you return, because there is some reentry. There's an on ramp and there's an off ramp. And when you have those built in, first of all, allows you to clear a lot of the decks so that you enter sabbatical with a little bit more things taken care of. And then as you ramp back up, you're being intentional there. So you kind of avoid those jarring experiences of starting and ending by some transition points at either end. So
Yeah, that's good. So how long do you recommend for a sabbatical? As long as you can take?
as long as you can take, yeah, that's always the challenge. Our sabbatical was 90 days, and at the end of it, we wished we'd done it 6 months.
Mm,
But here's what I would say: something is better than nothing.
yeah, that's true.
So if you can get a 30-day sabbatical and prepare
Hmm
well and re-enter well, that's way better than nothing. And so
Yeah.
I think sometimes we can let the perfect become the enemy of the good. And we can't
Mm,
figure out, well, how can I do 90 days or 6 months? Some people take a year, which I think would be amazing. Um, so I think that really having a sabbatical of any form, and it needs to be longer than a 2 week vacation, probably a month is the minimum, um, is better than doing nothing. And then, as you know, if you're the business owner and you can create a culture of sabbatical, learn how to do that better, you can make longer ones. If you're an employee and you come back from that, or you come to a different job, and they see the benefit of it, I think it becomes easier in the long run. So
I
but
think
30
so
days
too.
minimum, and longer than that's better.
Yeah, I think so too. We do 30 days for our leaders every 3 years.
Yeah.
So if they've been with us, for so long, then they get the benefit of sabbaticals. So, and we've had really great feedback from everybody that's gone on sabbatical.
Yeah.
Some have struggled more with the on and off ramp, but I don't think
Hmm.
I did as the leader and the initiator of sabbaticals in our company. I did not do a good job of the on and off ramp. And so once I
Yeah.
noticed that after a couple, I was like, okay, we got to start working on this. And so then I started like, okay, almost like Vacation Optimizer, the tool that Michael Hyatt
Exactly.
uses, but
Yeah.
like Sabbatical Optimizer, and like
Yeah.
getting that kind of laid out beforehand. So creating a tool and a process that helps with the onset. Now, the offset part of like coming back, that's the part that I'm still weak in for sure. Still got to work
Yeah.
on that part.
Well, I
Yeah.
just applaud you, Brooke, for taking the risk as a business owner of saying, I'm going to give my leadership team 30 days off every 3 years.
Hmm
We've been talking a lot this podcast about being countercultural. That's really, really countercultural.
Yeah.
And I think you've already seen the results. You don't need to be convinced of what that's done for your team, that's done for the business. And so hopefully that message will spread.
Absolutely. No doubt. Okay. I've got one question I ask every one of my guests at the end of the episode. So, do you have anything else you want to add before I ask my final question? And I mean it. It's actually going to be a final question this time.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
No,
If you,
I'm ready for the final
all
question.
right, here we go. I feel like it's like Jeopardy, but without the music. Okay. What is one thing that you've always wanted to do, but you haven't yet?
One thing that I have wanted to do is to hike the entire length of the Appalachian Trail.
Oh, same, same.
6
Yes, that's
months
good.
though, and
I
lots of
know.
planning and
Lots of the planning's the best part. Like, and then the gear
yeah,
and the stashes and shipping your boxes in. And like I've read way too much online about how to do this without actually
yeah.
having plans to execute it. I love it. Love the concept. A through hike is it's in my life plan. I'm like,
Okay.
I'm going
Fantastic.
to have, yeah, I have like a bucket list section in my life plan under
Beautiful.
hobbies, and through hiking is one of them. Also I've never hiked overnight solo. So that's another thing because my husband's
All
always
right.
done it with me. So
Yeah.
I'm working on the courage. I'm terrified of the dark. I am terrified of
Okay.
the dark. Like, and I'm a deer hunter. So like I go in with like a mag light headlamp, like everything get out of my way until I get in the stand, you know? So I'm working through that. I'm like, that's a challenge for me is to conquer the fear of the dark so I can solo hike. So yeah. Well,
Okay.
it's been
Sounds
so
amazing.
great. Yeah, you too. So wait, do you have any plans to do this yet? Or this is just like a dream?
This is still in the dream
Okay.
and not in the plans. Yeah.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not
Okay.
yet. I think not
Right.
yet is a better answer than not. Yeah,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
yet.
Cause there's a little thing in that little bump in that road called Hannah. So
Yes, there is. There is. So
I
that's hard
love
to
that.
imagine. Hard to imagine being gone for 6 months and
I
not seeing
love
her.
that.
So
Well, thank you so
yeah.
much for your time today and for being on the podcast. It has been great getting to see you, catch up, and just to be able to share about all the things that you're doing.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's been great.
Yes. All right. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Grit Crusade. I'm Brooke Plack. Join me again next week on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. This podcast is produced by ClintonCreative.com.